Getting out there, that's going to be the key to winning in the future, is getting out there, pounding the pavement, smashing our echo chamber, coming to people with that voice of love and compassion. Because we are the party of love, we're the party of peace, we're the party of compassion, and this is the way. Woo-hoo. Our next speaker that we're going to have coming up, I think it was yesterday, he made a post about something we've been talking about for the last couple of days, which is ballot access. That's one thing that the state of Georgia and the state of Tennessee have in common, is the overreaching ballot access laws that keep us away from the ballot. If you saw the video from the Tennessee State Legislature on Wednesday, when they shot down our House Bill 0609 that would have brought ballot access requirements in line with the Tennessee State Constitution that states that elections shall be free and equal. But they shot that down, and here we are. But Joe posted about that, and I know he's definitely a warrior for ballot access in states like Georgia, states like Tennessee, and Ohio, our brothers and sisters in liberty over in Alabama, in the same situation. But without further ado, the chair of the National Libertarian Party, Mr. Joe Bishop-Henchman.
Give me just a second to fix the camera issue.
I need to stall? I'll tell you.
Yeah, stall.
Why are libertarians so bad at knock-knock jokes? Because we say, come back with a warrant. But while we're stalling, thank you, Dave, for that great introduction. And I know Tennessee's in good hands. Congratulations on that.
Pleasure.
Go ahead, Joe.
All right. So once upon a time, in the pre-COVID times, the before time, long, long ago, I was waiting to cross G Street in Washington, D.C. You may know I live in Washington, D.C. Boo. Across the street, a businesswoman was walking briskly along the sidewalk. And as she crossed, so it was catty corner, I was looking this way, she was walking this way. And as she crossed, she walked across a grate in the sidewalk. And then all of a sudden she slumped down, hobbled on one foot. Her heel had snapped off in the grate. She angrily yanked the shoe off her foot, held the shoe and the piece of broken heel, stared up at the heavens and shouted to no one in particular, "Goddamn mayor." All politics is local, as the saying goes. You may align with your constituents 100% on vital national issues. But if you're a mayor and the trash isn't picked up and the roads aren't plowed, probably should have changed that line for Georgia. You're not winning re-election. If someone's running for local office and you're not talking with voters about the issues that will impact their daily lives for the better, you're not going to win. As Apollo Pizzell on our national staff has told me many times, for every 13 doors you knock on, you get one vote. For every 38 calls you make, you get one vote. For every 68 literature drops you make, you get one vote. Many libertarians have taken these lessons to heart. Nationwide, we have 224 libertarians holding elected office in 37 states. That includes 96 partisan offices. I'm proud to say this is an upward trend. And of course, right now we have 2 state legislators in the mix, up from 0 last year. State Representative Marshall Burt in Wyoming, and State Representative John Andrews in Maine. And since becoming your national chair in July 2020, on a platform of creating a culture of building the party to elect and re-elect libertarians, I've talked to many, but by no means all, of those 224. Asking them about their journey, how they won, and their assessment of being a libertarian office holder. and I highly recommend it. There's some amazing stories. We all have amazing stories. It's one of my favorite things about being national chair, going to state conventions all over the country, and hearing about everybody's libertarian journey, because everybody has a story. Here's mine. When I was a kid, there's an elderly couple that lived across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Johnsons were retirees, African-American couple, great people, everybody's babysitters for the neighborhood. One day, the powers that be decided that the Johnsons had to move because a highway on-ramp was going to be built near them and their house was in the way and had to be seized and torn down. So the Johnsons said their sad goodbyes and a large swath of the neighborhood became an ugly, empty lot. Shortly afterwards, the plans changed and they moved the highway and they didn't need it after all, so the whole thing was pointless. At that young age, I didn't really understand what was going on. I just understood that something awful had happened, but that was the beginning of the lesson for me that maybe the powers that be don't know what they're doing all the time. We're libertarians because we all know this. We're not surprised at the waste and the corruption and the incompetence and the arrogance that pervades government at every level. Our party is different because we offer something more than just our team having mastery over the economy and morality of the country. We want to unleash the genius and creativity of what some call the market, but is really just trillions of individual decisions made by free people. We want peace and trade. We want problems solved by other means than intrusive regulations, fostering dependency, and endless war. Before I say anything else, thank you. We succeed because of our thousands of activists and volunteers and candidates who spend their spare time and hard-earned money doing what you are doing here this weekend, building up our party for a better future. So thank you to Angela Pence for agreeing to be drafted for the National Convention Committee to plan our 2022 convention. Thank you to Chase Oliver for being my right hand on so many amazing initiatives that we're rolling out across the country. Ryan's not here, but I'm sure he's watching at home, chewing on his fingernails. Thank you, Ryan, for just being a sounding board on everything. And thank you, of course, to Shane and to all of your candidates for keeping the light of liberty lit in Georgia. All of our achievements are because of you. We had 50 state ballot access in 2020 because libertarians are willing to go out and collect signatures in all weathers in a pandemic. There were other candidates who had many more millions of dollars who didn't make even a fraction of 50 state ballot access because they didn't have what we have. We elected our first state legislator in a generation with a majority. He won 53%, a libertarian majority in a legislative district, because we came up with messaging that worked, and we hustled door to door in rural districts to look voters in the eye and tell that message. We have hundreds of local libertarians at the table fighting for libertarian solutions because we've prioritized winning elections, and tens of thousands of people gave their money and their time and their sweat to make it happen. Record vote totals, record fundraising, record growth, and it's all because of you. You make it happen, so thank you. Not enough for me, though. So let's do more. It's been a hectic and exciting 8 months since you've seen fit to elect me as your national chair. And I could talk at length about what the National Party is up to, what your LNC is up to, the trends I'm seeing across the nation are. You heard a bit about it from Stephen Nikela, your regional representative, in his report yesterday. Infrastructure to get our data operation into the 21st century, raising more money, professionalizing our staff, training more people, recruiting more people, more. And I'm excited to hear, and I have been hearing, about your successes, your growth, your goals, as well as your challenges and your obstacles. And thank you, Doug, for that amazing session on affiliates. I was scribbling notes down. I'm going to take some of those lessons to other states. But more than all of that, I mean, you know, You can bother me, and I'm a libertarian. I'll talk at length about what's on my mind. But I want to share 3 stories of libertarians with you. Amanda's in Arlington, Virginia, which is just across the river, Washington, D.C. When the stay-at-home orders came down a year ago, she sprung into action. She's a libertarian who helped fill a gap. She helped connect teenagers who now had nothing to do all day with young professionals, professionals with children who needed someone to watch their kids while they worked at home all day, connecting those people. She helped make sure that elderly and immunocompromised people who couldn't go out got their food and their medicine and their essential supplies. Amanda didn't wait around for the government to come up with a solution. She's a libertarian who came up with the solution herself. She was a libertarian who practiced what we preach about civil society standing up as government stands down. Town of Deming, New Mexico. Anybody heard this story before, Deming, New Mexico? One. Town of 14,000 people, 35 miles north of the Mexican border. At one point, the federal government, ICE, I forget what it stands for. Yeah, that's what it stands for. They started releasing immigrants that they had seized and detained at the border in Deming. Gave them a court date, let them loose in Deming, New Mexico. These poor people, they had no idea where they were, had no money, no language, don't speak the language, just dumping hundreds of them every night in Deming, New Mexico. The New Mexico Libertarian Party helped organize the town of Deming to find housing for these people, to help connect them with their relatives wherever they were in the country, help line up transportation to get there. An amazing story that, for obvious reasons, isn't talked about a lot in the mainstream press. And then Columbus, Ohio. My very first speech after becoming chair was to the Ohio LP in Columbus. They do it very differently. They have their state convention after the national convention. They elect their delegates through it's kind of a formula. So however active you've been, if you've knocked on a bunch of doors, if you've been a candidate, you get higher priority. It's very interesting. So it means they can have their convention after the national convention. So it's more of a rah-rah thing, which is neat. Kind of like today in Georgia. Because you got all your business done with, now we can just have fun. Not that this is fun. So anyways, during that time, I was alternating weekends with the presidential and our vice presidential candidates, shadowing them, being on hand, making sure national would be helpful. And that weekend was a Spike weekend, so I hung out with Spike in Columbus, Ohio all weekend. And he was using the convention as a home base as he was doing interviews and going to events in the area. One of the events he went to was a Black Lives Matter protest. And I went with him there and shadowed him, kind of as part of the group of people. And I think he obliquely talked about it earlier, because what he did at that event is he did something that's very hard for we libertarians to do. He listened. He went and talked to all of those people at that rally and just asked them, what's your story? Why are you here? And he heard all about it. You know who was not there that weekend at that protest? Democrats and Republicans. No, it was just us. And Spike left that rally. I still don't know how he did it, but he did do it. I saw it first with my own eyes, with that group's endorsement for our presidential ticket. And this wasn't some fair weather endorsement. No. Whenever we ran into any issues later on in the subsequent months, there was always a press release that would pop up. Columbus BLM defends libertarian ticket. It was just amazing. I tell these stories because of the reactions I get, me personally, because when people learn that I'm involved in the Libertarian Party. And they kind of come in 2 categories. One is, why do you waste your time on the Libertarian Party? They're never going to win. They're never going to have an impact. I hope you join me in continuing to prove these naysayers wrong and showing that we can elect and re-elect libertarians. The other thing I often hear is libertarians, those selfish people, critical, they're dogmatic, they're negative, they're mean. This is what our opponents want people to think about us. So let's all do what we can to demolish that stereotype. We can be strident, You get 3 libertarians in a room and you will get 5 opinions. We are passionate about individual liberty. And yes, we can be fiscally conservative and socially awkward. I do take that criticism to heart. But one of my goals as chair is to give a good personal example for empathy, for listening, and for solutions. Every month since I've become chair, we've shared one of the stories I've just told you as an activist of the month, showcasing the successes and praising the unsung work of libertarians who are being extraordinary. Not only does this work give us credibility for our political positions, it's the right thing to do. So in your next issue of LP News, if you haven't read these stories, there's 7 of them, because we're 7 months in to my term, in that spread there. And if you've got a story that you'd like to share or someone you'd like to nominate, an unsung hero for Activist of the Month, please email me at chair@lp.org. I have the easiest email address to remember in the whole Libertarian chair@lp.org. This stuff, empathy, solutions, listening, it's actually a strength of ours. Libertarians practice what we preach about people, individuals pitching in, about teamwork, about community. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a libertarian down on their luck. 2020 is a horrible year. A lot of libertarians, a lot of Americans down on their luck, hitting a rough patch. And the number of people who step up to help. Oh, libertarians in need, what can I do to help? That's the first instinct. It's not even a thought, it's just an instinct. And that's amazing. We are natural coalition builders, politically, because we understand the left in a way the right never will. We understand the right in a way the left never will. I've seen it in my day job, which if you don't know, I'm a tax lawyer. I go all over the country. I've testified to 36 state legislators to try to get them to do lower, simpler taxes. Your Georgia income tax is a tiny bit lower than it used to be. It's going to be a whole lot lower if we elect Shane Hazel in 2020. So I work with state legislators to advance lower, simpler taxes and fight harmful tax ideas. About $10 billion to my credit in my career so far. What I'm trying to do basically is get Republicans and Democrats to do libertarian things. Because that's, aside from 2, who makes up our state legislatures. It's really hard, and I'd really like you to send more libertarians to state legislators to make that job easier. So I've lived and worked in DC for 15 years. In that time I've traveled to every state but 2. And we're knocking one off next week. I'm very excited. If there's a libertarian organization, I've spoken to them, I've worked with them, I've done battle alongside of them. And there are a lot of great libertarian organizations out there. And if you have money burning a hole in your pocket, I can tell you where it can go for good use. But us, we, the Libertarian Party, we are the only one that elects libertarians. It's just us. If we're not electing libertarians, it's not happening. And that's why I ran for chair. I got tired of never having fellow libertarians at the negotiating table and wanting to see a party that is capable of electing and re-electing libertarians to make that happen. And we're doing that. John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural address, said something that has always stuck with me. And you've probably heard this before, but even if you have, you're going to hear it again. And as we continue on this enormous task of changing the policy direction of our country and our states, let me quote him. This is what he said. All this will not be finished in the first 100 days, nor will it be finished in the first 1,000 days, nor in the life of this administration, nor even perhaps in our lifetime on this planet. But let us begin. Thank you for spending your weekend being a part of making that happen. Who's got the vote? Questions? No? Yes?
Oh. Do y'all want to do questions?
I will take your insults, your challenges, your
We'll be here for a
your praise, your no, I have a dog who loves me. I get all the praise I need.
So Joe, how long did it take you to walk down here from Washington?
No, I got a rare thing, a direct American flight to Atlanta. So no Delta for me on that one. I was originally going to be in at the Frontier event in Wyoming this weekend, but that region is getting, I still don't believe it, but they say 3 to 4 feet of snow in one snowstorm, like shining levels of snow, and so we ended up postponing that event until June. But that's great because it means some of you can go to the Frontier Project event because it's now in June in Wyoming. And so we did this 2 years ago, and that was where we came up with the plan to elect a state legislator in Wyoming. And so who are the candidates? Who's active in their communities? How do we hone their messaging? What's our plan? What doors do we knock on? Who are the donors? Just real, roll up the sleeves, hard work. Kind of like the stuff that you guys are doing here today. And the goal there is the lessons we learn there, we can hopefully export to other states and be able to provide those elsewhere and rack up more victories. So June 11th, 12th, Cheyenne. Yeah, Zach.
On behalf of the Libertarian Party of Mississippi, I just want to thank you for getting Tate Reeves to be on board with lowering the income tax. So thank you. But my question is, as chair of the LNC, what is your goals to get more state legislatures elected as libertarians?
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw, I've been named as a senior fellow by Empower Mississippi, specifically to help with the tax work. Working on an op-ed, that's what I'm like frantically trying to write right now. It's an op-ed on the proposal, but Mississippi has a proposal on the table to abolish the state income tax. It's got a hard road ahead of it, but it's got more support than any similar proposal has ever had before. And there's a saying in Washington, D.C., thank God for Mississippi, and it's not a compliment. It's if you're bad at something in your state, you're not 50th, because thank God for Mississippi. And this is about maybe making a game-changing move for the state in being the only state in the South without an income tax. So at least that's what I'm working on for the op-ed there, and it's the message I've been telling the legislators. And I'm getting lots of good nods from state legislators in Mississippi, so we'll see where it goes. Your question was, how do we elect more state legislators? We got to run to win. And for a long time, we've done ballot access races, and those are very important because we got to keep our ballot access. And I ran a ballot access race. My husband ran a ballot access race. But if we want to win, it's not enough to put your name on the ballot and hope lightning strikes. And at the very beginning, I said, here's how many doors you need to knock. Here's how many phone calls you need to make. Here's how many lit drops you need to do. It's a method. And so we're going to be teaching a lot of those skills. This year, we're completely revamping our training programs for candidates and campaign staff. So it's going to be a series of 16 classes. They're going to be online. They're going to be regionally. So each region of the country will have a class. And forgive me, I don't know where the Region 2 one is. So if anybody knows that, shout out. And then we're going to have follow-on training as well. And if you go to all 16 classes, no tests, but if you go to all 16 classes, you'll get a certification from National that you're a certified campaign operative for a Libertarian campaign. Because the hardest thing, so I took office July 12th, and the world came crashing down on me because we had crises and six ballot access crises that had to be resolved. We had a new LNC that needed to be onboarded. We had to integrate with the presidential campaign in progress. And we had hundreds of candidates all over the country that were all asking for resources and help and advice. And the number 2 ask from candidates, number 1 was, give me a list of donors. So we did a lot of that. But number 2 was, I need campaign staff. I need field directors, I need campaign manager, I need volunteer coordinator, I need event people, I need. And we don't have that talent right now. And I'm aiming to fix that. So if you've got 16 free hours between now and November of 2022, consider getting your certification from National, joining our directory there, and hopefully we'll put you to work. And you know, I think that will go a long way towards helping. I mentioned very briefly we're trying to get our data into the 21st century. We're not a data-oriented party. We kind of make decisions based on gut or what we've always done or stuff like that. I'm trying to get away from that. Let the data teach us where we need to go, and let's make sure we're arming our candidates with data. We won that Wyoming race because we were able to pull information about the voters, learn who our likely supporters were, our definite opponents were, and all the persuadables, so we could steward and focus and prioritize our resources accordingly. And you know, it may not be sexy work, but it's how we get elected, how we get principled libertarians into elected office. Yes, sir.
So I wanted to know, is there any interest in working with other independent political parties? Let's say they have maybe a presence somewhere, but they don't have a strong candidate to run, but we do, you know, reach out to them, hey, help us out and whatever, just coordinating and collaborating with other parties. Is that an interest, or is that off the table? I don't know.
Good question. What was your name?
Adam.
I think you have. I'm joking. So I joined the Libertarian Party at age 11. And somewhere around age 13 to 14, I wrote a letter to the party saying, you know, there's all these other political parties. What's the deal with that? Can't we work more closely together? And I got a very polite, perfunctory response back. So I'm going to try to give you more than just a polite, perfunctory response back. There's obviously some areas where we can collaborate very closely and be, you know, battle brothers in arms on issues. Things like ballot access, things like challenging debate access, and there's a lot of active cooperation going on a lot of those areas. Beyond that, it's really up to each state. This is where I can avoid giving an answer, because people think the national chair is this, you know, I speak and libertarians do. Imagine people think this. You know? No, it's each state really decides that on a case-by-case basis, which is as it should be. Because in a state like New York, for instance, where there's fusion, where a candidate can run with multiple party labels. So in an evenly divided district, if a Libertarian Party decides to endorse one over the other, it can swing the election. And if the New York Party wants to do that, you know, that's for New Yorkers to decide whether or not they want to do that. In a place like Washington, D.C., where I live, where it's 91% Democratic, and the Libertarian, we're working hard to become the second party in the District of Columbia. And my husband running for chair of the D.C. Council got more votes than Donald Trump got for president in Washington, D.C., which was not a high bar, admittedly, but one we had to meet, and we did. There's a lot more opportunity to work with people, because there's the Democrats, who are also divided within themselves, and then there's everybody else. And so there's a lot of opportunity to work together, not just on ballot access, but on other issue coalitions, and on common goals to battle corruption in the DC Council, to make sure that there's voices for other perspectives in an otherwise monolithic DC Council. And I'm a big fan of issue coalitions. I helped get a major business and individual tax cut in the District of Columbia, again, against that political dynamic, by pulling together a political coalition of Americans for Prosperity, Americans for Tax Reform, Citizens for Tax Justice, Matt Iglesias and Vox.com, which is not a right-wing group if you don't know who they are, and Cato Institute, and a whole bunch of people. So it can be done. It's very hard to do. I've yet to beat that feat, but you know, there's a lot of areas where we can find common ground. On some issues, we can be arm in arm with the left. On some issues, we can be arm in arm on the right, and honestly control the narrative. And one day, something I would love to see, maybe this isn't a high enough goal, but this is the nerdy goal that I have, is enough libertarians in the United States Senate and the United States House and in every state legislature and on every school board and city council to be the deciding votes and control what passes. And if you had, I don't know, 9, 13, 14 Libertarian senators, nothing would pass without our approval. That's really all it takes. And there are parties in Europe where our equivalents there have carved out that position for themselves, getting 20, 25, 30% of the vote, and they control the government. The Prime Minister of Estonia is a classical liberal, even though his party got like less than 30% of the vote because of that dynamic. Because the Conservatives cannot command more than 50%, and the Socialists cannot command more than 50%. And I don't know, we seem to be heading in that direction in this country. And we have an opportunity to inherit the possibility of successes. So I hope that was more than a perfunctory answer. And if you and any of you ever hear opportunities where we can collaborate for an amazing goal, please send them Chase's way, who will vet them. And then, no, chair@lp.org. Thank you, Adam. That was a great question. Let's see. Maybe one more, I guess. Yes, ma'am. I love your shawl.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Andrea with People for Liberty.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to ask the big question that Dan Fishman asked.
Okay.
How is the Libertarian Party going to figure out how to keep from electing someone every 2 years? Because it's right during elections.
We talk about internal elections.
Internal elections, and it's right during presidential elections, Senate elections. There's always something going, and then we change the whole dynamic of the party at the same time that we're also running campaigns throughout the United States.
Yeah. I've read Dan's proposal, and if you haven't read it, everybody should read it. It's very interesting. He's proposed that the officers of the LNC be elected in the non-presidential years to a 4-year term. I've also said I'm not going to take a position on it because it might affect me personally. My husband has come out against it because he does not want me committing to anything more than 2 years at a time. But that's where that stands. So I'm not going to take a position on it other than people should read it and hear pros and cons on it. I will say it is nuts that this last year it was July, sometimes it's as early as May, but basically in May and July, the middle of the presidential campaign, when it's active and everything, the Dems and ours know who their nominee is, or presumptive nominee is, and the campaign is actively going, that we completely change our national leadership. Because, I'm not kidding, on July 12th, as soon as the gavel, I don't even need to air to it, as soon as the gavel came down on the National Convention, I was chair. It was magical. And immediately I had, all right, actually, this is literally what somebody told me, is you need to start downplaying expectations on 50 state ballot access because we're not going to make it.
Boo.
And that was the reality of the situation on the ground, where we were faltering in a number of ballot access drives. And honestly, it was a tough year because walking up to people with clipboards and handing them pens in a pandemic is hard to do. And we sued in a bunch of states. So I mean, I don't stand for that. So we pulled together what people would pull together, identified where we could sue to get relief, and we got relief in a number of states. We identified where we could deploy more people. The very first activist of the month that I honored was a guy named Christopher Thrasher. I don't know if you know him, but he was preparing for law school in Nebraska, dropped everything, drove from Nebraska to Maine, stood in the rain outside their voting places gathering signatures, and pretty much single-handedly saved our Maine ballot access and consequently 50 state ballot access. And I mean, stories like that in a whole bunch of different states. We had a mess of a at-large election where we had a goof in one state's calculations, and that needed to be sorted out so we could identify who our national committee was, so we could pass a whole bunch of important stuff. I had to make a whole bunch of appointments because a whole bunch of terms of things expire. The ballot access task force term expired with the end of the convention, which was stupid because we were actively in the middle of ballot access drives. And as I said, I had to quickly learn who all of the candidates were across the country so we could start stewarding resources to them. We had to onboard a new LNC. I had a very busy July and August. And we got through it because I'd been preparing for it, and I know a lot of people, and I'd been a member of the National Committee, and I was able to draw on a lot of people, and I knew like, oh, that person in charge of that, they're not going to get it done. We need to send that person to go do it. And I was able to make calls like that. But honestly, it's nuts that we do it that way, that we don't have the chair taking office the December before the election or the December after the election or something like that. So I'm not going to take a position on it other than to say he has identified a problem. I don't know if the solution he has is the right solution. And honestly, it's not up to me, it's up to all of you. As the delegates decide the bylaws, I just hold the gavel while you guys all fight about it. It'll be interesting to say, Omar Requero hasn't yet, but he will likely be appointed an alternate on the bylaws committee nationally. He came in 11th place because he tied for the 10th and last seat, and I flipped a coin and he lost. And I'm sorry, Omar, and I hope you don't take revenge on me for that. But if you do have an opinion on this, and you see Omar standing by himself, he's who you should be lobbying. But yeah, it was just astonishing to me, kind of, that we do it that way. And I've always kind of known that we do it that way, but like experiencing it firsthand. And I'm nuts, and I was up for the challenge, and we got it all done. We got 50 state ballot access, we got all the candidates, everything we need. We got the LNC onboarded. We're doing stuff unanimously on the LNC. I don't know if you've heard stories about the LNC in the past. Yeah, it's fractured and all that. A whole bunch of 17-0 votes last weekend, and not even on like bullshit stuff, like important stuff like new joint membership program between national and state. So people have the option to pay all their memberships at once rather than having to pay them separately and confusing everybody about why they're different. Doing things like setting up a support system for our elected officials so they don't feel alone and disconnected from each other, a network where they can actually connect with each other. This is important stuff that we're getting done unanimously because we're all pulling in the right direction. All right, I'm sure I've gone way over my time. I'll be here, and I'll be here at the brunch tomorrow. Thank you, Georgia. You were the first state convention I went to after I declared my candidacy for chair last year. I'm always going to remember that, and yeah, this is where I got to start. And also, my very first ever Libertarian convention was 04 in Atlanta. So Georgia's always got a good place in my heart. And I'm sorry for stealing Chase and Angela for you, but they're doing great work. Keep up the great work. Thank you.